Hi, everyone. Welcome to today Innovation Coffee on socially distant IoT or distancing IoT. I'm lucky to have Robert with me again today. Hey, Robert, how are you?
Hi, Alessandro. Thanks for having me. Good. Thank you. How about yourself?
Very good. Very good. I like your red hat today. Change
Thank
your hat
you.
today.
Yeah, it's because of our special guest. I thought that I'd wear at least I think that there's going to be some fun things to talk about there.
Interesting stuff. I saw a tweet from you yesterday. I think it was on with Matthew. So I think there's going to be some fun stuff to talk about. Exciting. So who do we have with us today? We have one special guest, and let's introduce him then. So it's Matthew. Hey, Matthew. What's up?
Hello. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I didn't expect to be just dropped in like that. This is really cool.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be a fun talk. I think there's a lot of things that we have planned today. So really, let's get started. I mean, introduce yourself. Give us a couple of words of who you are, where you are, and what you like to do.
I usually have notes for this, but I'm not prepared this time. So I'll just.
We don't need any notes.
So off the cuff, I am a Linux enthusiast. Let's just put it that way. I don't like to give myself an official title of any kind, but I got started with Linux around 3 years ago, and I've been addicted ever since. It got me out of a really depressive rut, actually. And I think Linux is like that for a lot of people and a lot of nerds typically. And now just gives me more time to play around with that sort of a thing. And I didn't really know what I was doing until I went to a makerspace, and there's a makerspace in Liverpool called Does Liverpool, and it's really cool, and it gets you into all sorts of things like IoT, embedded Linux development, how to make a shirt, how to make a coffee mug, and all sorts of other things. And yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. And one interesting question just to start with, and I know there's going to be way more questions to ask, but what got you into Linux specifically? Why Linux?
I can't really tell you what got me into Linux. It's just a magic thing. I think a lot of people experience this where they just delve into something and they don't really understand why. And that was me with Linux. I just kind of delved into it with no real prior understanding after using Windows for basically most of my life, and I loved it from the start.
So I actually have. I'm sorry, Alessandro. Is that okay?
No, go on. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I didn't know that we were going to be talking about Linux. Alessandro filled me in right before we went live. But my history, I come from a company called Lenaro. So I don't know. Are you familiar with Lenaro by chance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
I've heard them for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And so they basically specialize on Linux on ARM, right? And so I'm kind of curious, if you look at let's not talk about the full stack. Let's look at that lower level of the stack, that bare metal area that Linux kind of focuses on. I mean, so do you consider yourself someone who focuses on bootloader stuff, kernel stuff, firmware stuff? Where's your specialty? And also Alessandro's what drew you into Linux? I mean, did you want to configure your own Linux OS, or did you want to just what did you want to do? What was kind of your aspirations for?
Well, the reason that I got into Linux is because I wanted to get away from Windows. And that's the reason that a lot of people get into the desktop side of things. I had ran a server under my bed for quite a while, and then I started mining cryptocurrency with them. And actually, I think cryptocurrency has a lot to do with why I got into Linux in a small way. Exactly. We'll talk about that later. But at one point, I had 500 watts going under my bed, and then it expanded to 1,000 watts under my bed in summer, and that was a really terrible time. But that configuration side of things, just sort of the nutty OCD. I've got to get this right. I've got to get it, power it off, start it up again, and it just does the thing that I made it do. And that's really what drives me to use Linux a lot. And it's what really got me into embedded Linux development, and then doing things with things like Balena or Yocto or Buildroot and things like that.
So this might be more of a personal question, but you say you got into Linux to get away from Windows, but I mean, you can't really do much gaming on Windows. And I mean, do you game at all? I mean, sorry, not on Windows, on Linux. So do you game at all? Because if you do game, you do need a Windows machine.
I do actually, but you don't need a Windows machine at all. What you can do is, and this is what I do, is I run 3 operating systems on one machine, right? Under Linux, I use Arch Linux for that because it has like the latest QEMU and the latest Linux kernel, and I don't have to configure that. They just provide it in the package manager. So I run Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, and I don't have to get into fights anymore because of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So it's configurability.
And you patch a graphics card as well to that machine, and you've got the full gaming performance then.
Yeah.
Would you say then that configurability is what like really draw you in, and the fact that you can you can do what you want?
Yeah, for sure. And also the ease of use. It's like, for example, I think Wendell, there's a guy on YouTube called Wendell, and his YouTube channel is called Level 1 Techs. And he goes on about how some of his DOF files have lasted him, upwards of 20 years, right? So, you can configure Linux from day one, and 100 years later, maybe it'll still work. And it's more likely to still work than anything that Apple or Microsoft will produce. Because it's built that way and the architecture is made for that.
That's interesting. That reminds me of why I whenever I code, I write in Vim, because of the same reason. I always think, if I go back in time and I get thrown into a world where there isn't any cool text editor, I could use Vim, right? Like, I mean, that was it's always been on any Linux distribution.
And then the muscle memory is still there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So you mentioned Balena, and I know that you're a massive contributor to the Balena community. And I guess a question, on that is, what kind of pulled you in, or how did you find out about Balena?
I found out about Balena through a guy in Liverpool in the makerspace called Alex Lennon. His Twitter handle is @embeddedIoT, all one word, and that is a place where he shows off a lot of the stuff that he does. And I didn't know him before I went to DOS, but he then at some point decided that I was going to be his recruit or his apprentice, and then told me about all these cool projects that exist. And I sort of clung to Balena because I'd started playing around with Docker, and he showed me how easy it was to just get Docker up and running on a Pi using Balena. And because Docker's great, and Docker's what everything typically nowadays is built on, or you make your build environments in Docker, but you have to install Docker first. And so Balena helps you get around that problem of, I can't be bothered installing Raspbian, then installing Docker, then configuring my application. You just have the application there for you.
So real quick, you mentioned the DOS makerspace. I know Alessandro's mentioned it a couple times already. It is DOS, right? It's not do ES.
That's right. It's DOS. It stands for Do Epic, and maybe a rude word depending on your influence, but do epic stuff is what
do epic stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah. And so this makerspace, is it your makerspace? Like, do you help run the makerspace, or are you kind of renting a desk there and kind of just participating as a user of the makerspace?
I am definitely a bit of everything, and that is true for most people that actually attend the makerspaces. It's a big community effort. It's not funded in any way either. It's a what do they call them? It's not a charity. It's a but as far as I know, it's not for profit. It's just a community interest company, CIC. So everyone helps out. We have a GitHub repo. You can go and look at every issue we've ever made, and we use it to track everything, including what coffee to buy. And you can look at what coffee we bought in 2017 if you'd like to. So in that way, it really is a community open source effort. Everyone contributes. Everyone comes down and shows skills and teaches people. It's really like Hogwarts or something. I don't know, for makers.
I'm looking at the website, Alessandro. Is there any way that we can pull up the website just to show it real quick? Because I think that this is an amazing concept. I've been to makerspaces. I participated in like shared work areas, but this kind of, I think, encompasses a little bit of everything, because you can rent a desk by the day, or you can rent a desk by the month, and then with that you get to participate and utilize all of the different resources that are available to you there. I'm not sure if that includes a membership fee. I only started poking around here, but it seems like what you just said, like you get this full-fledged community that you can go in there and maybe hash out, brainstorm projects, build stuff with people. And in a lot of cases, like, this is kind of what people need, like, that collaborative environment to work in.
Yeah. How about I show you it then? I can show you it right now if you'd like.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Oh, you're at the makerspace right now?
No, one second. I'll be right back.
Let's actually.
What's he gonna show us?
Make Matthew
There we
slightly
go.
bigger then. Oh, what's
There we
this?
So now we can connect to the makerspace.
Oh,
And we're in the makerspace. We're driving the robot, right?
Oh, is this that robot you were talking about, Alessandro?
I don't know, Matthew. Tell us what this is.
So this is a robot on one wheel, technically, and it's got an iPad. It's an iPad on a stick. That's what it really is. And my laptop is just going to explode because it's crap, and the StreamYard rendering is really destroying every possible core it can. Okay, so we're adding around the makerspace, and it looks like here we've got some personal protective equipment that we've been making for people at the NHS and the broader community, anyone that needs it really. These are bands. You wrap them around your head, and you tie it, and you have a sheet of transparent material that is then cut out on a hole puncher. So only requires a laser cutter and a hole puncher. And then you've got like a personal protective visor that you can put over your face, so people can't accidentally spit at you or cough and get some spit on you. So you'll be better off. Yep. Oh, I think it's frozen. Oh. Okay.
While you're there, I'm going to ask you a question. I know you just talked about some visors, right? I know that you guys, while the pandemic was going on, you actually did a really amazing effort. There was a lot of community work being done actually in that makerspace. Can you tell us a bit more about that while you're walking?
Yeah, sure. So, hello.
Oh,
I'm on a live stream right now, so.
Do you know how to get the hard drive out?
Okie dokie.
This one?
Wait, what's that? What do you want to know?
I want to get typing other computer and use this hard disk.
Yeah, you can just take the hard disk. I mean, it's on the floor for a reason, I suppose.
Hard disk is very much. So how to get this?
How do we get it out? Oh, well, it's like a crappy HP thing, isn't it?
This one? This one is for other computer. This one is can't.
Oh, feel free to rip it out. No one's using those computers, so whatever way you can figure out how to do it, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. I've got to go and show people the makerspace.
Okay.
See ya.
This is real support right here.
Yeah. Real live support. When you talk about live support, this is it.
Right. Hello, Adrian. I'm on a live stream with Alessandro, who you may know from ARM.
Okay. No, I want to live stream. I mean, I like just live stream people randomly.
I'm just going to go and show them the PPE efforts and stuff like that and see what we've done in the laser cutting room. And
yeah. You need to check first before live streaming people.
Okie dokie.
That doesn't mean you can't live stream me, that's right.
Maybe we got
all right then.
There.
So, yeah, potentially. Anyway, so this laser cutting room here is where most of the action took place, and we've only got the one laser cutter. I mean, someone donated us a laser cutter, but we didn't end up getting it put in. But I don't know. It shows you how big the community is if someone can just throw you a laser cutter like that. So here's where I spent most of my nights. Oh dear, I'm going to crash. Right, so this laser cutter here produced 22,000 visors. Right, this single laser cutter, and it was running basically 24/7. Is me coming in, turning it on, pressing the start button, and just waiting there for from the hours, not 9 to 5, but 11 p.m. to 9 a.m. And then I would cycle home on my bike and then go to bed and then come back the next day. And it did that for around 3 weeks or 2 weeks or something like that. And yeah, most of the community were in there when I wasn't and doing the same thing. And this, in the end, produced 22,000 visors for people to prevent the spread of the disease.
Someone's asking what the chassis is for this robot that you're using. Is it like a readily available one, or did you build this yourself?
We could have built it ourselves, but this is a readily available one, and it crashes sometimes, and that's very disappointing. But you know, I'm sure we couldn't build any more reliable. It's by a company called Double. And it's just it's quite expensive because you need the iPad and you need the actual robot itself, and they're two separate things. Once you've got that up and running, it's like, I don't know, £3,000, something like that, and then you can ride around, and it connects to their service.
Very nice.
Cool. You can see on the
And if
left.
anything, this is
one wheel.
This is socially distanced IoT.
It is completely.
So I don't have
And I
to be
mean, on the
there.
left, you can see itself, right? Like that's a mirror that reflects the wheel.
On the left is the floor, so you can see roughly where you're navigating, so that you don't fall over things. So I'm going to go try and find a mirror. Ooh. I think there's a mirror on our right, so you can see what we look like. No,
No.
no mirror. I don't want to waste too much time with this, so
That's fine.
try and speed it up.
Send us a picture
Oh yeah,
later.
there's my desk on the left. I'll just show you that, and then we'll ask if someone can take us in the toilet and show us what we look like. We may get a stare no about that though. So this is my desk here. It's really messy at the moment. Under there I have a server, and it runs Proxmox, and I do a bunch of virtualization on that. And then on the left of that, I've got a machine running Arch Linux, which does, again, the 3 operating system thing, which uses GPU pass-through, KVM, and QEMU in order to get a cohesive experience on 3 operating systems on 1 CPU.
So Matthew, does the space provide you with any of the basic, like, monitors, keyboards?
Nope. It's very rough, and it's quite cheap too. I mean, this desk only costs £180 a month to actually rent it. So no, they don't provide you with anything, but that's okay. You get the desk, of course, and you get power, and you get coffee, and you get all that. But in terms of actually providing equipment, that's a no. I mean,
And you get a
of course,
robot.
you have lots of equipment everyone can use.
You get
like
a
3D
you get a
printers
robot.
and-
What else do you want?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
Can
that's just a robot that's on board, right?
Can anyone tap into that robot?
Yes, they can if we give them a share link, which we can't do from the webpage because this company is a bit weird. But yeah. No, I'll have to get around the debris. I'm afraid we can't see ourselves right now.
That's okay.
So I'm just going to go park ourselves.
We'll get,
But we do look
we'll get a
like
picture.
robots.
Send us a picture later.
You can kind of see it here, I suppose, on the glass.
One second. Let me make you big. Yeah.
There we go. Roughly, you can see it.
Oh, there you go.
Robot on a stick with a little camera on top and my face in the middle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it back to sleep then. Let's make sure that it doesn't fall over.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks for the tour, Matthew.
No problem. Sorry if I was talking too
I mean, I
fast.
don't
there.
know
It's
when
quite exciting.
I don't know when I'm going to be going to Liverpool, so like it might not be for a long time.
Oh, I can't quite get round there, but do you see that little thing with the blue little boxes on it, right?
Yeah.
That is a pegboard, and that has little Raspberry Pis on it, and they're all running Balena applications, so that powers a lot of the space right there. I'm going to park it,
Awesome.
and then we're going to say bye-bye. Oh, we're not quite in the dock yet, actually. You see a little charging in the face of
Robert, we had a bunch of crib tours in the last live streams. I mean, I think this has won the best crib tour so far, even though it's not really a crib. I mean, it's, he's been a bit it's a bit of a cheat, but I think we can make Matthew the winner.
Yeah, I think we still need to get Matthew to give us a tour of his room
True.
there that he's at now, because I see like a 3D printer, I think in the Balena episode. Yeah, also, by the way, awesome guitar playing and song that you wrote in the Balena.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking I'd do the same for this, but then I thought maybe not, because it was just going to be like innovation coffee. I was just like going to completely screw it up. Because I'm not as inventive as you might think.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching that episode, I was thinking like, me and this guy have a lot in common, and then exploring where's mine? I think I have my guitar right over here. You can kind of see it in the So, but I mean, that's pretty common. A lot of people just have a guitar, but yeah. Anyways,
Really
I had a guitar for many years. I never played it. What did you say, Matthew?
I said it's quite strange, isn't it? A lot of people that you think don't play instruments really do play instruments. It's really becoming more common.
Yeah.
As humanity races into the future, it's just the thing that people do. It's weird.
Well, I mean, I found, on the topic of instruments, like I found that, I learned guitar when I was 13 or 14 years old. Like I didn't have a teacher, right? Like my teacher was Metallica. So like I picked up Metallica and then I went on and got tablature books. Like this was kind of like in the era when internet was kind of becoming a thing. And so I picked up some Metallica books from Guitar Center or tablature books from Guitar Center. I started teaching myself that. And I haven't forgotten it, right? Like now I'm not as fast with my fingers anymore. And my fingers aren't obviously calloused anymore. So I can't play as long. But I mean, when you learn so young, I feel that, you kind of keep that forever. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's like muscle memory, isn't it? It's like Vim. It's like you'll never be able to use Vim if you've started with Vim because it's just muscle and it's there forever, just like a bike.
David says, plug in the Strat.
Oh no, that Strat's that's not functional. That's just that. I used to think Relic guitars were really cool, and so I decided to try it myself when I was like 13, and that's the result right there. And it hasn't moved since.
Yeah, my first guitar was a Fender Strat. I mean, most I feel like most people's is.
Yeah, me too. I didn't even get an acoustic. I just started straight with the electric.
Yeah, same. Aqua Metallic Fender Strat. I remember I had to save up for a while to get that thing.
Have you tried to print a guitar? I mean, has anybody tried to print a plastic guitar? Yeah,
they have, and they've succeeded. And you know what? The strangest part too was that it was an acoustic guitar, which is really the most. It's quite strange because you think that would be the hardest thing to build, is something that's really hollow and that would keep the sound in and vibrate as little as possible. But no. They successfully did it. It required a lot of glue, so it's not really different. It's not one piece. It's not like you printed the whole thing in one go. You had to do a lot of assembly, but it did work, and yeah, it sounded really just quite normal. And
interesting. I never thought that could even be a thing, but yeah, there you go.
Fender's made a guitar out of cardboard. They've done that.
Wow,
that's quite a popular thing that I've seen online. Yeah,
interesting. So I wanted to kind of lead into the conversation around the 3D printer that you've got in the back of your room. Sure. And it's interesting because I believe, if I remember correctly, you said you built that yourself, right?
Yeah, well, mostly. I mean, when you get these things, are in kits, so you have to build some of it. So they'll give you the bottom assembly and the top assembly, and you'll have to just sort of screw those together and put a bunch of screws in, just like IKEA furniture or something. But then I added the screen on top and the little bed leveling sensor. On the right of that, I've got a cardboard box. I've just got an Ultra Base today, which is like a better optimal glass surface with micro ridges in it so that the parts adhere properly, because glass is terrible. And the default stock bed is also terrible because it makes your prints look less shiny on the bottom, and it's just not as nice, and it wears out and stuff. So all in all, it's £100 for the printer, or that's what it was when I got it. And then I've added to it over time, and it's only £200 at this point. So it's quite good for what you get, for what you paid.
I mean, it's super interesting because I remember when 3D printers came out, it was expensive to get one, and now we're in a situation where you can build your own for with a kit. Obviously, you're not building everything from scratch, but you can build one for around £100, right? So it's quite interesting. You said pounds, and I remember that we didn't mention that actually you're the first actual English guest in this show. So
really?
Far. We've had all American guests so far, right, Robert? I think there was no English people yet, so you're the first one. So congratulations!
What a privilege! What a privilege! And it's fitting actually because I didn't bring coffee. I brought IoT.
Oh,
oh, T. That took a second for it to click for me. Like IoT.
That is going to be IoT. That is going to be the most common joke that you get on this show. Because I typically don't like coffee. It's like that episode of Star Trek with Data, where it's like they try and give Data the android alcohol, and he says, "Oh, this is revolting. I hate it." And he gets asked the question more, and he's like, "Please." Right.
I was gonna say you're probably not gonna have a coffee or tea because it's late, but actually you still do. So
no, I woke up at like 5 because last night I was just up all night trying to get Raspy working, and it worked out. Raspy, the voice assistant. And when it worked out, I was like, wow, that is an amazing piece of tech.
Wow. I was actually gonna ask you about that. So that's cool that you brought it up. So what did you actually do? I mean, I guess for the people that don't know, can you tell us what Raspy is?
Raspy is a natural, as far as I know, and I've only read about this last night, but it's a natural language processor, and it uses a pre-trained model, at least I think. It uses some form of model that's like a gigabyte or something, and then it somehow trains that on the processor and RAM on the Raspberry Pi, and it's able to do that in like 15 seconds. So all you have to do is define the words that you want to use. You have to be like, okay, I wanted to know what bacon is, and if I say turn the bacon on, it'll know what bacon is. It'll know what turn is, and it just somehow works it out from the text that you input. And I'm really just blown away by it because I don't need to know how it works, but it just works. Like, because they have some examples in the text file, like turn the garage lamp on. I was like, okay, what about a word that has nothing to do with lamps like bacon? Just put it in there inside brackets, and then it train it, and then it knows what bacon is, and it knows that you can turn it on or off based on the context around it.
It's awesome. I mean, it's a neural language processing library, right? It's open source as well, so you can use it completely for free, and you can you get the whole open source community as well. So it's really awesome. I mean, I've had a look at it, and it's probably actually one of the only ones that are actually so comprehensive right now. So it's a really cool piece of tech, actually, and the community is quite vibrant as well. So it's really cool.
MQTT and everything, MQTT, Node-RED, Home Assistant, all that stuff, and it's just so native to what I'm already used to doing, and the way that I'm turning my lamps on and off is through all that tech. So now I can just plug Raspberry into that, and it's quite simple.
I was going to ask you actually why you had. So we talked about this last time. Why did you come up with the idea of using machine learning for recognizing voice or words in general?
Oh, it didn't. It was just the guys from Matrix Lab showed it off last week, and I was like, that's really cool. How does that work? And so I just added it to the existing stack that I have, which is called Ming, which is a rude word here, but it stands for Mosquito, InfluxDB, Node-RED, and Grafana. So okay, let's add Raspberry to that, and let's add Home Assistant to that or something. And we're looking at something there that's basically like capable of replacing Alexa, because it gets it wrong less of the time as well. Like I say, Porcupine, what's the time? Or Raspberry, what's the time? Right? Okay, Alexa and Google Home can handle that. But what about Raspberry? Tell me the time, and it gets it, and it works, and it knows what I'm saying, and I can stutter, and it's great, and it works better.
And what's awesome is that if I remember correctly, it actually runs directly on the Pi, right? So it's actually running on the device itself. So you don't actually need to be connected, right?
Yeah,
is that
100%
correct?
local.
Yeah. So that's really interesting, right? Because it means that you're not sharing your voice, your what you're saying with an external server of whatever kind, right? Like, it's all actually being processed on your device, and you can make sure that it's everything is being kept local, right?
And that's right, and that's the same for everything on the Ming stack, which is this Balena Docker stack that I've got going on the Pi in my room that controls everything.
This is all open source. I mean, you've got everything. You've got this container somewhere, right, that anybody could download.
That's right, and deploy in like one command line operation without much complication, and soon by a button on a dashboard that I can just provide on the GitHub and just go, click that. And from a Docker file, which contains 10 lines of text, which I've told things how to interoperate with like 5 text files, it's really not a lot of work. I've written a few text files. It's not source code or anything complicated like that. It's like 10 lines, and then they can then deploy that system on their device in the real world.
Can people get this from Docker Hub? Like, can they just pull it from Docker Hub, or
no? So that's the difference with Balena. So you wouldn't want to put loads of applications in one Docker image on the Docker Hub, because that's like kind of the antithesis of the Docker approach, which is one application per container, and then you just spawn loads of other containers and run them on top of each other, and that's called a stack then. So what Balena does is kind of make it like the Docker Hub, where you can just go and download it and push it to a device as if it was one cohesive thing. Of course, I support both. I support the just Docker on a Pi or Balena as well. And Balena is just easier to use, but you can just, go through the process of getting Raspberry and then installing Docker and then running this with Docker Compose.
Yeah.
So when you run the Balena one, you're still running Docker Compose in the backend, aren't you? Or is it?
Exactly. Yeah. It just does a lot more for you. It's like I click a button, I get all of this project that I've made, and I deploy it to the Pi, and that's it. And the only difference is that from that and Docker Compose is that you don't have those extra 2 steps of install Raspberry and install Docker Compose.
So have you done any? I'm gonna pull this away from this topic, same topic, but just a different layer here. Have you done anything with crypto on with Belina or crypto related activities, blockchain related activities?
I've done some stuff with a cryptocurrency called Masari, which is a Monero fork, but that is just like, contributing a few things, maybe editing a Docker file or two. Not much really. I've made a few real crap coins or crap forks of cryptocurrencies for fun. One called Zuckbuck.
So you've made some. And are you familiar with like Ethereum, of course, smart contracts? I mean, have you studied anything into like Solidity, that programming language to build out smart contracts, or are you more kind of just focused on more of those legacy tokens that don't really go into the that smart contract arena?
I love Bitcoin and I love Lightning. Lightning is really amazing technology. It's not just changing a constant in the code and expecting everything to be okay. Lightning Network is a proper solution to the scaling problem, and it makes it just like the internet. You have protocol stacks, and you can store your Bitcoin in contracts that are not Turing complete, which is the big failing of Ethereum, is the fact that it is Turing complete. Therefore, anything can go wrong. You can't prove that something is going to do exactly what you say it's going to do. So I'm a big fan of Bitcoin Lightning Network and Bitcoin Script.
So then you're more of a maximalist, where you're taking kind of like, oh, Bitcoin, we need to make Bitcoin ready for these high levels of transactions. But I mean, like, what about when you're talking about these other coins? We go like blockchain 2.0, blockchain 3.0, where let's just throw one out, like Tron, right? Where they're basically able to complete thousands and thousands of transactions. It's not Lightning Network, it's not Bitcoin, but you have these coins that are coming out that are capable of doing that.
But that is absolutely at the consequence of privacy, security, scalability, and decentralization. All of these things go away when you do what Tron does, or when you do what any of the proof of stake models do, because that's the trade-off. The proof of work is expending energy for security, right? And it's a physical transaction like that. It's not. There are no complete solutions. It's like Git. Like last night, I was trying to solve a problem where I was adding a feature to the Ming stack, right? And I was trying to add documentation as well. Now, the code that I wrote was completely separate, and I wrote two features. But the mistake that I made was that I documented both of those features, because that means now there's a merge conflict, because I edited the same file, and all I was doing was adding some documentation to those README files, right? And now there's a merge conflict that I need to solve out. Now, Git doesn't solve that in the same way, right? Proof of stake and things that are not proof of work don't necessarily solve the problem of security or being able to, they don't solve the proof of work problem. Proof of stake is an alternative to proof of work that attempts to solve the same problem, but it doesn't solve the same problem.
Yeah.
And just like Git doesn't solve the problem of merge conflicts.
And I think we need to have a whole separate episode to talk with Matthew about this.
I think actually, you brought up a really interesting. So I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I mean, I think
something.
I know something, but usually I know the wrong thing. So I've made wrong choices and never the right choices. But aside from that, I think what's actually interesting is you brought up this the concept of like solving Git merges, right? Or Git conflicts. That's a really interesting topic, right? The more I think about the way we write software nowadays, and the more I think about the fact that there is a lot of stuff that we do manually that's going to be gone in a few years, right? So this is one of them.
Potentially, but it might be the case that it's not solvable. Just like the halting problem in computing, it's not a solvable problem, and I don't think it is solvable. There's always going to be some manual work involved, but it could be made better.
I mean, like for me, at the beginning of every day, I wrote a script that basically fetches, rebases, and merges everything that I do. So like I have my script for all my repos that I'm part of. I run my script and it basically updates all of my local repos at the beginning of the day. And so, if I'm going to go work on it and I feel that someone has made any changes or that I might be modifying a file that someone else is on, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to have to deal with that conflict when it arises. But I try not to. I try to avoid anything like that.
Exactly, and especially when it's just something simple like adding documentation. There's a merge conflict in the README file, right? Why doesn't Git just take the latest version? Because it doesn't have a concept of latest, because it's all diffs, right? And so the technology doesn't, like the decentralized acyclical graph or whatever it is, doesn't solve the problem of merge conflicts.
I mean, I'm just throwing it there, right? Like, could you not just say, well, both of these things in the context that we are, looking at right now, they both make sense. So why not include both, right? Like in the example that you brought up, like there is 2 different additional documentation pieces that I'm writing. They both make sense. They're both, they're not concurrent. Why not? Actually, they are concurrent. Sorry, they're not like replacing each other, right? So why not include both?
Well, because someone might have modified a heading and placed the heading in a different location and stuff like that. So you can't. Well, I mean, there probably could be some algorithm to solve that, but my solution to this would be to have parts of the Git repo not in Git, like a Git large file allows you to tag a file as a large file, and that gets sent to a remote server with lots of storage. Similarly, maybe we could have things that don't get handled by diffing, or maybe a different concept that is maybe potentially more dangerous, but it makes complete sense for documentation. And
Right. I mean, that's really interesting. I think we could do a whole other topic or other episode on Git and how you could solve things. I mean, one thing, just last closing thought on Git, actually, I always love the idea that it was created by Linus Torvald because he needed a way of working with his colleagues on Linux, right? And it's like the guy not just he didn't just create Linux. He also decided to create Git just to help him, right? It's just like, oh my God,
yes.
It's unbelievable.
And it's become this big, massive thing that everyone talks about. Exactly. Yeah. And everyone uses, of course, because it is probably one of the best ways to do things, but there is no complete solution.
Yeah. I tell, oh, sorry, go ahead, Alessandro.
No, I was just going to go back to the previous topic, but if you want to say something else, Robert.
I was just going to say, like Git for me, I mean, Git version control in general, right? Like when you're just talking about version control, like it's your ultimate, I want to say resume, but it's like your ultimate track record for the things that you've done online. Like there's no other way that I know of, at least like in that space, that you can go show an employer or a colleague or a friend, like exactly what you've done since since time began. Like you can go back to your commits back in 2010 or whatever, and you can pull that commit out and say like, hey, look, this is my contribution to this project 10 years ago that I made,
But here's the problem. Here's the problem is what you actually mean is GitHub, because no employer is going to go through your actual Git history. And that's a big problem, is the fact that like, if I want to make a project on GitLab, no one's going to go there. And, maybe that'll change in the future, but it's just a matter of, it's like social media. It's like, if you could get away with it, would you not, you wouldn't be on LinkedIn, right? Right, if you get away with it, you wouldn't be there, but you've got to be on there. Same with GitHub, maybe you'll do your big projects on GitHub because of the exposure.
It's true. Yeah, you're right. That's a really, really good point.
I'm going to pause on this note, and I'm going to go back to the IoT side of the house and what we were talking about there. I was curious to know about how you see how do you see maintainability when it comes to IoT devices and deployment and maintainability? Like, I think it's a really interesting topic, right? Because it's I know I'm switching over completely, right? But I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on what makes it hard and what makes it easy to actually not just deploy your piece of code, but also maintaining it over time, right?
Okay, well, if I was an old curmudgeoned engineer, a BOFH, if I was one of them, then I would be getting my Raspberry Pis. I'll get a Raspberry Pi. I'll stick an SD card in it, and the SD card will contain Raspbian, right? And then I'll SSH into it, and then I'll apt install a bunch of things. I'll forget about that next week, and then I won't be able to reproduce the project. That's what makes it hard. Things like that, that way of thinking is what makes things like this hard, because, of course, a lot of people will not want you to use Docker or will not want you to use certain technologies. And it's just like, if we just got over it and just started treating that like a text editor, it's like, I don't care what text editor you use. Just get me to the end result and make sure it's reproducible. That would make things a lot easier. But there's a lot of stuff that gets lost, even in source management. Like you don't know what your dependencies are, right? You've not documented things. That's what makes it hard. But what makes it easy is things like Balena, Docker, Ansible, and Kubernetes, and Nixos. And Nixos is really cool as well.
Yeah, I love how you keep. I love how you keep going back to documentation. Like it is such a. I started my career as a technical writer, right? So like I got into a company and they were using this real shoddy wiki process where anyone in the whole world could just go in and edit something, and they were linking to here and linking. It was just a mess. You want a launch page. And so, like, I mean, when you're talking about documentation in every single thing, like every project you do, like, should be documented well. I mean, reproducibly well. And I just love, like, my commendations. Like, I love how you keep going back to making sure.
Well, I've only realized
pay attention to it.
I've only realized that because of the Makerspace, because at the Makerspace we try and document everything, and I was quite bad at it at first, but and to some degree I still am when it comes to the physical stuff. But on my own stuff, I document as well as possible. Like recently, I added Raspi to Ming and made sure that I documented new optional things and how to enable them and how to disable them, even if it's just a basic thing like here's how you do it before, after, and it's just removing the hashes as the comments, right? Like some people just don't know, so you just teach them and then they won't ask you, especially if it's right there in the front page in the README and not littered and through some big massive stack of stuff that they have to dig through, or chapters, or just give people the most obvious information up front, and they won't ask you any questions. And that is true in the Makerspace as well, because we have documentation on a GitHub wiki, and you can just go and look at that if you want to know how to use the laser cutter, and no one's there to help you, as long as you've had an induction. But for other things like making a mug and how to put the paper around it and mistakes not to make, things like that, very simple. And people do this on paper usually, but we're doing it on GitHub, and that's the only real difference. But yeah, it helps people.
Let me ask you a question. How did you get to this stage? I mean, I'm going to ask you a personal question. Feel free to not answer, or skip it if you want. But did you go through university, school? How did you get into programming? I mean, I know you said you were interested in Linux, but how did you actually get to this stage of your experience and expertise? Is it through? I'm asking
what are your credentials? Maybe is
I don't know the answer to this one.
So I mean, so let me tell you why I'm asking you this, because there's a lot of people that believe that you have to have certain credentials to know all the stuff that right? But this is not the case. I mean, you've learned this stuff. You learned a lot of stuff. I don't know how much you've learned, officially through official methods. But what I know is that a lot of stuff that you're talking about your experience in a makerspace that's sometimes seen as kind of like a hobbyist place where people just go and play, right? But actually, what's really interesting is that you had experience almost as if you were working in a big company, just because you had you had 100 co-workers with you, right, in a makerspace. And that's
I'll tell you the full steps. One, I went to university for music, and it was really bad, and it was a really bad class, and I didn't like it, so I quit. And then I got really depressed, and then I laid in my room for a year, not knowing anyone, couldn't even leave the room, and when I did leave the room, I couldn't even speak to people. I had lost my ability to speak socially. Then I found that a makerspace was a thing from a guy called Brian Lunduk, who does Linux stuff on YouTube, and he was like, go to a Linux user group, go meet people. And usually I wouldn't take that advice seriously, but because it related to technology, I was like, yeah, I'll take that advice seriously, because it was, that's what I'm into. And so I tried, and I looked at, it's like, does that really exist in Liverpool? Is that really a thing? And of course it was. And so I went there, and it was, the guy that we saw that almost told us off on the robot. It was him, and he was there with some other old dude. And apparently that was all there was. At that stage, I didn't even know it was more than just two old guys that I'd never met before. I was really awkward because I was really young and I didn't know anything. And I still, to some degree, feel like I don't in a lot of ways. But I kept going back for some reason. And the second time I was there, they made me scrub the floor because they were just moving into that space that I just showed you, because it was completely bare. They had nothing there. It was just a wooden floor, and that needed scrubbing. So I was there for that for a little bit. And fast forward to now, I worked for one company there, who just managed to pick me up despite me knowing nothing, for about 6 months. And that got me really quite a bit into programming, because they were just sort of pulling me up by my neck, sort of teaching me the fundamentals and the basics. And, to some degree, I still don't know the basics. and I'm operating at a higher level than I should be because I never got any formal education. But you know, it doesn't matter because you get stuff done at the end of the day. Yeah.
I mean, Matthew, thank you for sharing that. It's really nice to hear a story, like a personal story like that, and you know, thank you again for sharing it. I think it's
no
important.
problem. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, no, there is people that out there that I think, you know, need this kind of insight, right, of someone that has kind of gone on a hard and difficult journey, like most of us, but you know, some have it harder than others.
Well,
and,
it doesn't feel hard and difficult now, but I suppose it did at the time, and I suppose that's for most people. I'm sure you've had hard and difficult times, but I'm sure they're a blur now.
Yeah, and I mean, so what I really like is that, you know, you've gone through this kind of personal journey to find what you liked, right? And then you kind of got into this makerspace with a community that was there to support you and to work with. And actually, you know, you kind of you got into, well, we all got into this pandemic situation a couple of months ago, right? And you actually managed to make of that also a really positive experience because you know, with the community, you actually managed to help a lot in that situation as well, right? So it's really a nice story as a whole.
Well, that COVID's response, right, that right there was something that I would never have been a part of if it weren't for the fact that I discovered the makerspace even existed. Because when I was in my room, right, depressed, had no idea what I was going to do because I quit university, and then, you know, all my friends just disappeared because they were all at university, right? So had no friends at that stage, but now I've got friends for life thanks to the makerspace that are into all the same things as me, and Linux and things that can hopefully get me a job in the future, all that sort of thing, right? So yeah, the answer to a lot of problems is community.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess for anyone watching, if you are still looking for a job, Matthew, I think you know, anyone watching that is interested in getting Matthew, shameless plug, but I mean, I think you know a lot of stuff, and yeah, I mean,
I am actually flattered by that. Yeah.
Are you looking for work though, Matthew? Is that like something that you...
Oh yeah, certainly. I haven't had a job for a very long time.
So you should actually entertain looking into Linaro. Excuse me. I mean, I know for a fact, like, and I was going to mention this after your story. You know, I personally kind of look at the college diploma or the college certificate as kind of like a sheepskin, you could call it, you know, like just something that they say you need. But in reality, I much prefer, like the way you pointed it out, the GitHub resume, right? The open source resume, you know, working in Linux and working in open source space and on projects and in a maker space, you actually attain a lot more real world experience and knowledge. And you also have a lot more to back it up. I mean, I have an electrical engineering degree. I haven't really, I can't remember anything from there. Like, I mean, it's all paper engineering. You're doing mathematics and solving DSP equations. And unless you really go for your master's or your PhD, you're not really designing anything new. Like DSP space hasn't really changed. Like the mathematics of it hasn't changed. And so, I mean, like, yeah, back to the point, you should look into Linaro. Like we can talk later. I mean, I know some people there that I could at least introduce you to.
Oh, that's fantastic! Yeah. I really appreciate that. I'll look into it. But what you were saying about the forgetting the equations and things like that, it's like, you know, just Google it, right? Like that. This is what most people do. I mean, I've seen professors that are giving lectures. Say 1 second, like Jordan Peterson, right? I've watched some of his lectures on YouTube, right? And you know, sometimes he'll go and like read something, or he'll go and Google something, and he's like, you know, that's what it is. Because like that's what most people do. To pretend that that's not the way things work is just, like you say, sheepskin.
I still, like, you know, so I still participate with my university and I help students out and stuff like that. And I got this question yesterday from a student. They're like, what's the one thing you took away from school? And I'm like, they taught me how to learn. Like, I guess like I learned how to learn, and I learned how to be resourceful. Like I learned how to Google. Like it's like the little things that, like, you know, anyone can kind of do that. And also I'd say, like, you learn how to not be afraid of what people are asking you to do. So you can say, like, if someone comes up and says, hey, can you solve this equation? Or, hey, can you code this program? You're like, no, but I can do it if I really wanted to. Like, I go figure it out.
I noticed this on Freelancer. Like, I'm on Freelancer, and I will go and I'll bid for a job that I have no idea how to do, and I'll learn how to do it on the job, and that's fine. That's right. And for some things, that's not okay, but for a lot of things, it really is okay to do that sort of thing.
Challenge yourself. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's a lot like guitar. If you don't about the equations, it's a lot like guitar. If you don't play it, you'll lose some of the facility, but you'll still be able to work it out and get it back.
Yeah.
And I think, to Robert's point, I think the important thing is always just being resourceful, like just wanting to try and wanting to put the effort in. I think that's all you need to do all the time. I think that's, there's a lot of things that in anybody's job, like things that happen that you just don't know how to solve or how to look at. And you just have to figure it out. And that's kind of, that's life in general. So I think it's learning. I think that's, I agree. That's what university teaches you, but you can learn that in other ways. You don't have to learn it through university only.
Exactly.
So
have we got time for a live demonstration, by the way, or is this show ending on the hour?
Oh, we have another demo.
We've got, how long is it going to take you to do a live demonstration? Otherwise we could do another time, I guess.
Maybe we can do it another time. That sounds great.
Yeah. I think we've talked about a lot of interesting things, and we kind of got a bit more personal than we planned, but I think it's good. I think it's it's one of those things that you never plan, right? But I think it's interesting because it does. I personally think that talking about personal journeys helps others that might be in your same journey, right? So
absolutely. I think there's a lot of people out there that like me. That's maybe this is a male thing. I don't know, but you just sort of feel like you don't want to do what people tell you to do, right? And so that even applies to advice that you just see online and think it's all lovey dovey. But in terms of actually getting out there and talking to people, it's not just being a single person in one room and being able to mingle with people and not just sort of deteriorate in your own brain. Right, that is the most important thing that people can learn from, at least my experience.
Yeah,
I'm going to end on an interesting note. I just talked to him this morning that actually got dumped by his girlfriend, and what he did, not now, he got dumped a while back, but what he did to get out of it was he actually, for 2 years, he did everything on Groupon that he could get his hands on. So he actually went on Groupon and he just said yes to everything. And he actually got, he showed me some pictures. He got his baby scan because it was a thing. It was a thing on Groupon, so he just got it, and he was just saying how it was actually a thing that he set himself. It was just I'm going to have to do everything that comes up on Groupon in the next 2 years, right? And he did it. And he got out of the baby scan. Well, he even did that, right? It's just one of the things that came up.
That's fascinating.
He didn't have a baby.
Oh, I see. Oh.
It was just random, but it reminded me of Yes Men, right?
Yes, I was gonna say. Yeah, it's funny.
Cool.
Well, anyway, I was gonna say I love this, by the way, Alessandro. The way you're doing this with and thank you, Matthew. Like Alessandro said about sharing some personal stuff. I kind of really look at this show as a mix between what a radio talk show would be, where we just kind of have fun talking about stuff, but then also do the technical stuff and showing things your makerspace, which is amazing. So yeah, that's awesome. Thanks Alessandro, and thanks Matthew. It's cool.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No, it's really cool. It's really, really nice to know of all the things that you learned on your own and all the things that you learned.
Well, not on my own, because of course everyone at the makerspace is basically it's like being raised by wolves, let's say, because when you go to university, you're getting raised by sheep, I suppose. When you go to a makerspace, you get raised by wolves.
Yeah.
You see, what I really like is the fact that you learn stuff because you needed it, right? You have a problem and you're trying to solve it, right? So that's why
and through that's a lot of the way to learn. Nowadays, I really do want to actually get into the book and actually read about some of the great problems of computing, right? That's what I want to do now, because I feel like I'm lacking some of the principles. But you don't get there until you've done the stuff that is fun, all the stuff that you get up to at a makerspace. And you don't really get interested in it unless you see what the potential is.
I'll tell you right now, there's four. I've done hackathons at universities, some pretty reputable ones. 4th year engineering students who have never used GCC. So, and you say, hey, write a C program, and they're they're on a Raspberry Pi or on a Dragon board or something. And they're like, oh, well, where do I start? And it's what's your favorite text editor? I don't know. Do you use Van? Whatever. It's on there. Just just write a program. They're where's the IDE? Where's my Visual Studio? Where's it? And I'm
See, and that's an interesting thing. The IDE is like, I see myself now using an IDE, but it's not before I was, again, old and curmudgeon's sort of attitude, saying I don't want to use the IDE because I want to do everything on the command line. But it's like at this stage, I'm using both because I've realized that there are some things that IDEs do. But, you know, in being old and curmudgeon previously, I understand that what goes into making the IDE at least, or I'm not going to get caught by any of the mistakes of the command line as well. Like I know both of those things, so it's not like an IDE is completely useless, but you can't just learn the IDE because that will hide some issues from you, or it'll hide things that I would know just by looking at it.
I think Matthew's calling us old and curmudgeon, Alessandro.
No, I'm calling myself old and curmudgeon. I'm saying that I had this attitude given to me by the Linux community, let's say. And so I've sort of been getting out of that attitude in a way, but it has some merits to it too. It's like you should learn how to do everything on the command line. You should learn how to do stuff in an IDE. You should learn both, because if you don't, you're not going to be a part of any community other than the toxic one.
Yeah.
Also, because if you get thrown into Vim for whatever reason, you can't come out.
Yep. I mean, I'm sure. It's like monkeys bashing the keyboard, isn't it?
I just have something scrolling on the back on the bottom of the screen. You can see it, Matthew. I was just going to mention to everyone, but also to you, you should have a look at this big challenge. I mean, there's a lot of different partners that are actually working on this challenge together. It's a Hackster challenge on it's called Detect and Protect, and it's basically encouraging people to find solutions for detecting COVID-19 or protecting against COVID-19. And there's a lot of really interesting submissions actually, and a lot of free hardware that you can get from participating. So if you've got some free time, or if anyone in the makerspace has got free time and you want to suggest it to them, I think it's a really interesting.
I did have one idea, and this was at the very start of the pandemic, and I think you'll like it, but you may have seen it actually. Someone solved this problem and created it out of my brain.
Sure, you want to share this, or you want to keep it for yourself and apply?
I'll keep it for myself and apply.
Get us all excited to hear your project, and then you're like,
right. No. So this idea was it was a laser pointer, right? And it would just spin around on your head as a little 3D printed thing like this, right? I didn't get it working. Someone else got it working before me, and I never shared the idea with them. It just materialized in the world somehow, because people have the same ideas all the time. I thought no one would have this idea, but it's just a laser, right, that rotates on your head like a beanie, right, like a propeller beanie, and it would project a 1 meter perimeter around you onto the floor, right, and so you know what your personal space is, what your COVID space is.
Cool. Well, I mean, if you've got any other ideas, or anybody else has any ideas, submit them, because there's a lot of really interesting things to. Well, I mean, we're trying to help, I guess, and
it would be great if someone could take that idea and do it, because basically the guy who did it, it was a massive thing, and you have to wear like an army helmet because it was a big, massive motor on his head, right? But if someone could get that down to just a small little pointer, that'd be really cool.
Cool. Well, Matthew, again, it was a real pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you again for sharing your personal story and your interest in Linux and technology in general, IoT, and for having shown us the makerspace. Actually, that was really cool. And I think we're going to have another show where we go through what you've done with Balena, because I know you've got a cool project. So we'll talk about that on another show. Robert,
absolutely.
Any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'm going to do a shameless plug of my own here, but it'd be nice if you, Matthew, joined us on Discord. I don't know if you're there already, but there's a really cool. There. Oh, you are on the Discord server, the community.
No, I've got a Discord. I didn't realize that's what you meant. Right.
Yeah, so we have I say we, like the community, the kind of developer community has a really awesome Discord server, and so I'll share it with you. But it'd be awesome if you joined. We do have folks from kind of all walks there, like developers all around the world, and developers from all different expertise levels, and there's a lot of cool stuff to do, and it'd be awesome to have you there, because you're doing a lot of amazing things as well that you can share. So yeah, I'll share that with you though.
Give me a link after this. Yeah.
Awesome.
I just posted it up here.
Actually, share that one instead, Alessandro. The one that I just shared is the permanent.
Sorry, I missed.
Yeah. you can make links, but the one that I just shared is like the forever link. That will never die. Link that will never die.
Ooh, I've got so many things in my notes that I didn't even talk about. We're definitely gonna have to do this again.
Yes.
The link that never dies. That's it.
Link that never dies. Yeah, that one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Cool. Well, cheers with your IoT.
Clink.
Well, it's all done now. Clink, clink.
I can't choose you, Alessandro. All the way across. Clink. All right.
Thank you again. Have a good rest of your evening and day, Robert.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.